What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I'll be setting up my fantasy cruncher for tonight's single game slate between the Bills and the Bengals. I'll be setting up here for the largest field GPP on FanDuel. While you're coming in, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button if you want to get alerts when our shows go live. All right, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to rearrange my columns. I've got a quick view saved with what I want to see in the middle of the screen, which is ownership projections, my projection, exposure cap, how much I get of players once I've run a crunch. Next, I'm going to sort by projection. And I'm going to remove every player who has a projection of 0. Again, this is just for the purpose of saving me some time when I'm making groups later. These players, if I remove them, they won't show up in groups and muddy things up when I'm trying to find different players to add to groups. Just clicking and scrolling. Just unchecking all these boxes. Player pool on FanDuel is so big. Okay, looks good. Now I'm going to go into the MVP tab, and I'm going to set an exposure cap on all players of 20%. Excuse me. Not a magical number there. Seems like a good way to distribute your MVPs a little bit. If you want, more players to be in your MVP spots, you could set this number a little bit lower. If you want a tighter MVP pool, if you want it to be just like Allen, Burrow, and Chase, you could set that at 40% instead of 20%. I think 20% is generally a good, number to start with, and then I adjust from there. But 20% is probably what I'm going to use on this slate. Then I'll go into advanced options. I'll be working in two tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. I'm setting these back to the defaults. Okay. Back to the defaults now. In the general tab, unique players per lineup, the default is set to, this should be at 1 player as the default. The default is set to 1. I leave this at 1. I'm going to be building here for a 150 set. So I'm going to leave this at 1 unique player per lineup. If you're building 40 or fewer lineups, I typically would recommend changing this to 2 unique players per lineup just for the sake of diversifying your lineup set a bit. Salary cap, I don't set a minimum salary. I do set a maximum salary. Again, this is just for the purpose of avoiding being duplicated. Changes every slate what I set this cap at. Generally, the more money you leave on the table, the less likely you are to win, the more money you're likely to win if you do win. That's not always the case. Some slates, the optimal lineup might use, 55,000 instead of 60,000. But in general, the more money you leave on the table, the less likely you are to win, but the more likely you are to win a lot of money when you do win. I think a good starting place is 58,500. Still fairly likely to win, and you're not going to be duplicated 1,000 times typically. Offensive players versus defense. Default is set to a max of 2 players versus your defense. I'm going to change this to 4 on FanDuel. So I could have 4 players from one team against just the defense of the opposing team. We've seen it win this year. It's not going to win all that often, but it's also not going to be used all that often. So I do like to allow for it. Global exposure cap, I'm going to leave at 100%. I already changed it to 20% in the MVP spot specifically. Randomness, I do use randomness, and I'm going to set my randomness to 30%. If you want more control over your lineups, set this number lower or don't use randomness at all. But 30% is a number that I like to use. Minimum projection, including calculation, default is set to 3. I'm going to leave that at 3. And if there's a player who projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points who I want to have in my player pool, I'm just going to manually boost their projection to be above 3. And then players from each team max, I'm going to leave at 4. So I can have 4 players from one team against 1 from the opposing team. You know what I did immediately the first time I won 6 figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news. You can get full access to these same tools without winning 6 figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $240 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more, and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your free subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all that, you also get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you win the bet. If you lose the bet, you still get your money back in free bets. It's legit free money and a free subscription to the best DFS tools out there. Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and can be added to your Stokastic subscription after the fact. Reminder, make sure you use the link or we won't be able to track you. All right, now I'm going to move over to the groups tab, and I'm going to make some groups. My groups all revolve around the quarterbacks. You could make plenty of groups if you want to really maximize your correlations here, but the ones that I think you really need to make revolve around the quarterbacks. So I'm going to start with a Josh Allen MVP group, make him my key player. Going to sort by position here, and I'm going to add all of these Bills pass catchers to the secondary group. And I am going to include the running backs. Okay. And with Josh Allen, he has enough rushing upside that I think he could be optimal in the MVP spot without any pass catchers. So I am going to actually click this only apply plus minus adjustments button. So this part of the rule no longer applies. I'm not requiring anybody, but I am also going to, I accidentally included Jamar Chase there. So I'm going to remove him from the group. Okay. So I'm going to, for all of the pass catchers, give little boosts. I'm going to give a 12% boost for each of the wide receivers and tight ends. Not a magic number, just a number that I've kind of come up with through some trial and error. And running backs, I give a little bit smaller boost to. Generally not quite as highly correlated. So now this is just going to make it a little bit more likely that if I have Josh Allen in the MVP spot, I'm probably more likely to get to one of his pass catchers and often more likely to get to two because I'm giving them all boosts in lineups that have Josh Allen at MVP. I was going to rename this group Allen MVP. All right, next I'm going to make a Joe Burrow MVP group. So I'm going to find Joe Burrow in the MVP spot, make him my key player. And then similarly, I'm going to add all of the Bengals pass catchers to a secondary group. And again, I'm going to include the running backs. Joe Burrow has shown some rushing upside this year. He's rushed for like 250 yards and 5 touchdowns, something like that, but clearly not on the same level as Josh Allen. I'm not going to click the only apply plus minus adjustments button for Joe Burrow. I'm going to keep this rule as is. So I'm going to require at least one pass catcher from the Bengals in lineups that have Joe Burrow at MVP. I'm also going to give boosts to make it more likely that I get to multiple in those lineups. And I'm just going to give, starting with 12% boosts, and this is a trial and error thing. If I end up after giving these 12% boosts, if I get like, 100% T. Higgins or 100% Jamar Chase in my Burrow MVP lineups, I would probably come back and lower their boosts a little bit. Obviously, that would, assuming that I don't want them in 100% of my Burrow MVP lineups, I'd come back and lower their boosts here. But this is where I start. I generally start with 12% on the pass catchers, unless I'm concerned about getting to 100%, and then a little bit of a smaller boost to the running backs who aren't quite as correlated. Okay, next I'm going to make a Burrow flex group. I'm going to find Joe Burrow in the flex, make him my key player, and then I'm going to add all of these Bengals pass catchers to a secondary group. Including the running backs. And now because I have Burrow in the flex, I can also add these Bengals in the MVP spot to the secondary group. Okay. Now, whether I should require a pass catcher or just give boost to these pass catchers is a very good question with Joe Burrow. Again, he's shown some rushing upside this year, and especially on FanDuel, where you don't get a full point per reception. It's a little bit more viable to actually play Joe Burrow in the flex without any Bengals pass catchers anywhere in the lineup. I think, though, I am going to require it. There's obviously positive correlation there. And although it's possible for him to be optimal in the flex without any pass catchers, I think it's still more likely that if Joe Burrow is optimal in the flex, there's going to be a Bengals pass catcher there somewhere in the lineup. So I'm going to leave this group just as is. Joe Burrow requiring one of these pass catchers, no boosts or anything like that. I think you could, though, if you wanted to take the time, you could click this only apply plus minus adjustments button and then give boosts to the pass catchers instead of requiring one, because I think it is possible for Burrow to be optimal in the flex without any pass catchers, but again, relatively unlikely. So I'm going to require one pass catcher when I've got Burrow in the flex. With Josh Allen, I think it's likely enough for him to be optimal in the flex without any pass catchers. I'm not even going to make a group. I'm not going to require it. I'm not going to give any boosts or anything. I'm not even going to make a Josh Allen in the flex group. If he ends up in the flex without any pass catchers, I'm just going to probably be okay with that lineup because he does have a good amount of rushing upside. All right, so that's going to do it for my groups. Now I'm just going to crunch out 150 lineups. Using my projections and see what comes out. All right, so first lineup we see. So now that this is the last part of my process, I'm looking at two things here. I'm looking at the lineups themselves. Do they correlate well enough? And then I'll be looking at exposure levels for each player going through position by position. So I usually start by looking at the lineups, make sure that they look okay to me. First lineup I see, Josh Allen in the MVP spot with Stephon Diggs. That looks good. I'm totally fine with having Josh Allen with just one receiver in the flex because he has so much rushing upside. I think this is a viable lineup. Next lineup, Joe Burrow in the MVP spot with multiple pass catchers. That is generally my preference with Joe Burrow. I'd like to have multiple. I allowed for just one, and if I have just one, I'm okay with that in several lineups. But I do generally prefer multiple. I think Joe Burrow more likely to get there through the air, and if he's going to be the optimal MVP, he's probably throwing to multiple pass catchers, so neither of them it outscores him. Here we've got Josh Allen in the flex without any pass catchers. Again, I allowed for it. I don't want to see it in like 50 out of 150 lineup, something like that. So if I see too many of this, I might come back and group it out somehow. But for now, I'm okay with seeing it in some. Here we've got Diggs in the MVP. No Josh Allen in this lineup. Again, I'm totally fine with that. A lot of people who are hand building, if they put Diggs in the MVP spot, they're automatically right away going to add Josh Allen in a flex spot. But again, the receiver outscores the quarterback on every passing play. Definitely viable, especially with Josh Allen being so expensive. Definitely viable for Stephon Diggs to be optimal in the MVP spot without Josh Allen. And then we've got Joe Burrow here with two pass catchers and the kicker. I think this looks like a totally fine lineup. Here we've got Burrow with Chase. That looks good. No Josh Allen to worry about here, so everything correlates well enough. Allen and Diggs. T. Higgins with no Joe Burrow. Again, totally fine. Don't mind. That looks like a good lineup to me. Here again, we've got Josh Allen with no pass catchers. Again, I don't want to see it in, I'd probably be okay with it in like 15 lineups out of 150. Maybe that would be a little bit too much for me, more than I'd like, but I am getting a good amount here. Here's Josh Allen in the flex with no pass catchers. Here's another one. But so I could go back and group it out. But before I do that, sometimes it kind of settles itself when I just adjust my player pool. So like I'm not seeing any Gabe Davis here. Yeah, getting to 4 Gabe Davis lineups out of 150. So I probably want more Gabe Davis anyway. And after I adjust my players, that might just kind of solve the problem of these correlations. So I'm going to go through now and look position by position, see how much I'm getting of different players. And again, I should say I'm kind of giving you an example here. I'm not really making my final lineup decisions here. I'm just going through and showing you what my general process will look like. I haven't really done enough of the research to decide exactly how much I want of each player yet. And I typically won't actually go through this process until we get inactives an hour and a half before the game starts. But I can give you an idea of what I think I'm likely to think when I see these things. So I see Josh Allen 63% in the flex plus 20% in the MVP. Getting a lot of Josh Allen, typically okay with that. 20% Joe Burrow in the MVP spot. Pretty surprising to see only 17% Joe Burrow in the flex. Maybe if I want a little bit more than 17% Joe Burrow, I'm going to give him a little bit of a projection boost. And I move to running back. 27% Joe Mixon seems fine to me. 2% Devin Singletary seems low. I probably want a little bit more, so I'll give him a little bit of a projection boost. Same thing with James Cook. Samaje Perine, I have interest because he's only getting 10% ownership. Maybe want a little bit there. So I'll give him a little bit of a projection boost. And then Nyheim Hines, not currently in the player pool. He's clearly too expensive for his projection. However, as a result, coming in at under 1% ownership, and we know that Nyheim Hines has the ability to break open a play. So I think that I do want some Nyheim Hines. I'm probably actually going to like him if he's going to be under 1% owned on this slate. So I'm going to make sure I get some Nyheim Hines into my player pool. So I'm going to give him a projection, get him above 3, and then get him high enough that I think I'm actually probably going to get to some, hopefully. All right, looking at wide receivers, not getting to a ton of Jamar Chase. Maybe I want a little bit more there. 37% Diggs seems a little bit more reasonable. 25% Higgins seems fine. Not getting too much Gabe Davis. I think I'd like more than 3% Gabe Davis. So I'm actually going to give him a bit of a boost. And I'm getting plenty of Tyler Boyd, Isaiah McKenzie. Maybe I want some Trent Irwin at just 2% ownership. Again, I'm going to have to look later and see how often he's actually on the field with all of the big three healthy for the Bengals. But maybe I'll get him into the player pool just because nobody else is playing him. I think I'm more likely to want to play some Shakir and Cole Beasley. Shakir obviously has the ability to break open a slate on a single play. Cole Beasley, not so much, but if he's on the field, it could be racking up PPR points. So I'll get these guys into the player pool. Tight end, not getting to any Dawson Knox. I'm probably going to want some Dawson Knox. Obviously, again, way too expensive for his projection, but as a result, only getting 11% ownership. So maybe I give a little bit of a boost here to Dawson Knox. Plenty of Hayden Hurst. Don't think I need to do anything there. I'll probably get a little bit less naturally because of the other adjustments I've made. Quentin Morris. Maybe I want him in the player pool. Mitchell Wilcox, same kind of thing. I don't have this sorted by salary. Okay. Normally I do like to sort by salary because I like to look through, at players, how they are relative to each other in salary and what I need their projections to be. You know what I did immediately the first time I won 6 figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news. You can get full access to these same tools without winning 6 figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $240 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more, and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your free subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all that, you also get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you win the bet. If you lose the bet, you still get your money back in free bets. It's legit free money and a free subscription to the best DFS tools out there. Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and can be added to your Stokastic subscription after the fact. Reminder, make sure you use the link or we won't be able to track you. Kickers, getting to a ton of Evan McPherson. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. I'm probably going to get less of both of these guys. Maybe I'll bring up Tyler Bass just a little bit. You can see here, Tyler Bass more expensive than Evan McPherson, still projects lower than Evan McPherson. So I can bring up that projection a little bit. See how much I get after I've run another crunch. 22% of the Bills defense, just 6% of the Bengals. Probably I want more than that of the Bengals defense. Maybe not. This is probably going to be a great offensive game, but we'll see. Crunch it out again. All right, so now that I've made some adjustments to projections, I'm getting to 26% Shakir, 39% Cole Beasley. Maybe I probably am going to cut back on those numbers, so these, won't be quite so high next time through. But wow, the defenses came down quite a bit. Kickers, went from 55% McPherson now down to 23%. That's probably closer to where I want it to be. Still not getting to much Dawson Knox, getting to a ton of Quentin Morris. Yeah, so these are all adjusted. I'd probably go through and, give a little bit more to Dawson Knox, maybe a little bit less to Quentin Morris. I guess I'll just go through it one more time right now before I look at the actual lineups. Maybe a little bit more. Tyler Bass still projects worse than Evan McPherson at a higher price tag, so still not probably going to get a ton, but maybe more than I was. Not getting much of the defenses. Still only 14% Jamar Chase. I'm getting a lot less Tyler Boyd. As I said, I'm getting to a lot of these guys. Maybe I don't want quite so much, so I'll bring them down a little bit. Here, bring up Isaiah McKenzie. And yeah, still not getting much of these running backs, so maybe I'll bring them up a little bit. Quarterbacks, yeah, I'm still getting to 74% plus, I'm assuming 20%. 94% Josh Allen. So typically I run a few crunches before I bring anybody's projection down. But in the interest of time, just to show you what I end up doing is I'm probably, if I see 94% Josh Allen, I might be okay with that, but maybe I'm more likely to bring it down just a little bit. I'll crunch again. And yeah, so I'm still getting, you can see right away, wide receiver, still getting to a ton of Beasley and Shakir. So maybe I'd probably bring those guys down a little bit more, but I'm not going to go through that whole process right now of looking through each player, 10 times. I'm just kind of trying to show you what I do, and that's just crunch it out and adjust as I go. It's all trial and error for me. And then the other part of it is looking at the lineups themselves. You can see here, Josh Allen at MVP. We've got multiple pass catchers. Joe Burrow, Tyler Boyd. This one correlates well. Now Joe Burrow at MVP with multiple pass catchers. Allen with Beasley looks good. Here we've got Burrow in the flex with Jamar Chase. Josh Allen with Shakir and Beasley. That correlates well. Diggs at MVP with Josh Allen, Beasley, Allen with Shakir, Allen with Quentin Morris. So now we haven't seen any naked Josh Allen lineups here. See if I'm running into any. Because again, I don't mind having a few of them. Josh Allen MVP with just one pass catcher. Yeah, so I didn't even need to go and adjust the groups themselves. I'm naturally getting to less of naked Josh Allen just because I did give boost to his pass catchers, make it more likely that I get to other pass catchers. So I think this is looking good. These look like they correlate well enough for me. Again, wouldn't mind if I have like maybe 10 Josh Allen in the flex without any pass catchers. But with the adjustments I made here, not getting to any of those. Again, this is not would not be my final crunch. I'm going to do my actual final crunches after we get inactives, an hour and a half before game time. But the lineups are looking a little bit better themselves. I do have some concern about if I get Josh Allen at MVP. We saw some that have like Josh Allen with just Shakir and Cole Beasley. I don't know that I love that. It's pretty unlikely for both of those guys to hit. So you could go and group that out if you wanted to, say at most one of those guys. I'm probably not going to. I might be okay with it. It's unlikely for both of those guys to hit, but certainly possible. So probably not going to go group it out, but something you could consider is, some of those guys who are a little bit thinner, the Shakir and Cole Beasley, those kind of guys. You could group it out and say at most one of those guys. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. This is just the general process. You look at the lineups. Do they correlate well enough? If not, maybe go make adjustments to your groups. And then you go through, I go through, this is my process, going through position by position, looking at exposure levels. Do I want more? Do I want less of each player? And adjust accordingly. Of course, all projections are relative. So anytime you adjust one player's projection, you essentially adjust everybody else's projection relative to that player as well. Just something to keep in mind. Anyway, hope you can find some success tonight using this or a similar process. Good luck.